Good evening, students. So today's lecture is about the ADO.NET, that is Active Data Object in the .NET environment. Now, how we can build this application? But before we can build this application, you have to understand certain terms that is used by our Visual Basic .NET in order to understand this the background of this ADO.NET database application. First thing that the database application that we are going to build in VB.NET are client server applications. In an actual production environment, our application will be installed in many clients and all of the clients will be accessing the same database. So we are going to create it in that way. The client server model is very efficient one because as we know, it allows us to share the computational load among multiple computers and each computer does what it can do best. Now this picture over here is a description of how the architecture of the ADO.NET is made. You can see there are two components, are very distinctive components. One is the .NET data provider, the one which helps you to do all the internal from the connection to running your commands to reading your data from your running your SQL queries and all. These are done by the .NET data provider. On the other hand, you have the data set. The data set is actually indirectly it's an XML file. The data set is actually a collection of the data table. The data table is like you can see that it's representing the actual table that is there in your database. It represents that. So it has got other things that is there inside the data table, that is your data row, data column, okay, and constraints are rules, right? And even in the data set you can have your relationship between the tables, and if there was already a relationship between the tables of the database in the main database, then it will be automatically be copied into the data set. So that is one thing. Now the .NET provider helps you to connect to your actual database environment, let's say MySQL or maybe Microsoft SQL or maybe any kind of database system with the help of the provider. So the connection job is to connect to that particular database. So you can take a particular table from one database system and put it in one data set. You can take another, even if it is also possible that you can bring another table that is from the same database and connect it. You may not be, if you wish that all the tables that is there in the actual database, you don't want it in the data set, you can do that also. All these things that I'm talking about right now, I'll make it very clear by giving you an example as I'm coming to that also. So this is how the architecture of ADO.NET looks like. So you can keep a picture of this, or you can keep in mind what we are going to do in this way. So here are some description about this these objects. Okay, so the data access in ADO.NET relies in two components, as I said, data set and the data provider. The data set, ADO.NET, as you can see, okay, does not allow one to maintain a connection to the database and access it directly. So it's a connectionless uh, mm, environment. All right, to request the data, what it does is that it will just it will do to request the data we are interested in. All we need to do is a structure, the structure of the database that will hold the data. This structure is an object called a data set. So you'll create an object of the data set. You'll be seeing all these things live as we come to an example. The dataset is a disconnected in-memory representation of the data, and it can be considered as a local copy of the relevant portion of the database. As I said, it does not create actual connection to the database, it just creates a memory representation. The dataset can be manipulated and updated, so you can do whatever you want in the dataset. You can update the database, means you can update, you can add a record, delete a record, change the relationship, everything you can do. Okay, when use in the dataset is finished, changes can be made back to the actual database, that is the central database, for updating. So that is called committing. So you can commit all the changes from the dataset, whatever changes you made, and then you send it back to your actual database. The dataset can be loaded from any valid source, like a from a Microsoft SQL, from MySQL. So you just need the connection provider for that particular database, and it can be loaded into the dataset. So data provider, the data provider is responsible for providing and maintaining the connection to the database. So if you are using an SQL, MySQL to connect to your ADO.NET, then you need a MySQL data provider. If you are using, let's say, so-called your maybe Microsoft SQL or maybe Microsoft Access, then you need something called OLEDB, object linking and embedding database data provider. So you need just one thing, that is the data provider that will help you to connect to a particular database system. So every database creator will always create their respective provider so that you can have it, and it will help you to connect your data set with the actual database system. The data providers gives you a lot of things, components. There are lots of component classes. So these are the connection objects which provides the connection, command objects which is used to execute the command, your SQL commands, the data reader which provides a forward only, read only connected record set. That means if you want to read a data, means entire table from the from your actual database to your data set, you need the data reader. Similarly, you have got there is one more thing that is called a data adapter, a very important one. Okay, a data adapter object which populates the disconnected data set with the data and performs an update. Now you will have separate data adapter for separate table. Suppose in your actual database, let's say I am using Microsoft SQL, and there I have a database XYZ. Inside this there are table 1, table 2, table 3, table 5. So if there are 5 tables, all right, so then you will need 5 different data adapter which will help you to connect to all those tables. Each will be executing its as it said, it can perform the update with the particular table. So that is one thing about the data provider. So all these classes are already there inside the data provider, and you just need to create the corresponding object, connection object, command object, data reader object, and the data adapter object. So the data access with ADO.NET can be summarized as follows. So this is the summary of what I have talked just now. A connection object establishes the connection for the application with the database. So it will help you to connect. The command provides the direct execution of the command to the database. If the command returns more than a single value, the command object returns a data reader. So more than one value to provide the data. Alternatively, the data adapter can be used to fill the dataset object. The database can be updated using the command object of the data adapter. So you have two ways. One is that you can run the command directly in the dataset by using a command object, or else you can use the data adapter to run the command in your table that is inside the dataset, which will update it to the corresponding database. So this is the summary of the ADO.NET application. So in my next video, I will be showing you how exactly all these things that I talked about just now will be shown in with an example of how to connect it with the database. So I'll be doing all these things. So here are some more slides for this. In this, I'll be giving you. I have already actually given you this slide in the classroom. So you can read about the data reader. As it says, it's a forward only, read only results. So when you have more than one record that it has to be read, you can use the data reader object. And the command data adapter object is very important. As I said, it helps you. You can see that over here, it can help you to run the select, insert, update, delete command. But all these commands will be run. So the data adapter contains the 4 commands for retrieving rows from the database, updating and deleting existing rows, inserting everything. These commands are SQL statements used to move data between the dataset and the underlying data source. When I say the word underlying data source, here it means the actual database. Dataset is your connection, that is a memory representation of your data, and this underlying data source is your real data. So you will do all the running of the command in the dataset, which will update it in their underlying dataset. Data source. So we'll be going for all these things, and ADO.NET uses XML to pass data between the server and the client. So XML is a common language for transferring the data between the client and the server for your ADO.NET application. So I'll be doing an example in the next video, and you will be seeing it how all these things that I talked about the ADO.NET architecture comes into one program. All right, thank you.